Alrighty, so this next tutorial is this is the next tutorial in my series of tutorials, many on my YouTube channel as you see. This one's going to focus on FumeFX, a voxel-based Fire plugin for 3ds Max that is very, very powerful. It is very hard to get used to though. It is much different than just basic 3ds Max, and yeah, I really enjoy it though. You can get some really cool effects. Here I'm going to quickly render out a frame. And it's very good for fire. That is not going to work. I think I might have to resim this, which I'm not going to do. I don't know why I would have to resim this. Set F9. F9. Yeah. So my fire is not working. It's not liking me. I probably don't have my path proper. Yes. Oh, no, I shouldn't have it. But it was working. You have seen the final product, and let's get to it. So, first thing we're going to do is new empty scene. So, what you have to understand about FumeFX, this is just kind of like an introductory thing, is that it's voxel based, and it's not basis of 3ds Max. It has many different. It's a plugin. But it's not like a basic modeling tool or anything like that, or an animating tool. You have to simulate it first, and then you have to animate it. So first, it's much like physics engines. You bake it or simulate the effect, and then you render it as well. So this is going to be just a basic introduction to it, using just making a simple torch. So first, what you have to do is go either buy the plugin. It is expensive, and install it. Once you install the plugin, it has, well, I don't know if it has it, but you just export it and you put it into your plugins folder of your 3ds Max. Then, if you install it properly, you should get FumeFX right here, and it should only have this one FumeFX thing. I'm also using FumeFX, the newest version of FumeFX, which has a few different options, and you might not see them in the older versions with buoyancy with each of them, and there's a few other WTP options. So let's first create what we're going to do. So let's make a FumeFX box, and I'm going to make it 75. Oh, first actually, make sure you are working in generic units. So go under Customize, Unit Setup, and click Generic Units. This is because FumeFX doesn't really work well with physical-based units. It's based on the baseless unit of Max, which is generic units, and the baseless physical lighting units for the lighting of the FumeFX. I'm pretty sure this is because it came out a long time ago and they haven't updated it for a while. Just make sure you're working in Unit Setup, Generic Units. So now let's create this. Just drag out the box. This is what you call our simulation space. Since FumeFX is a voxel-based simulation, and what a voxel is a pixel in 3D space. Just think of it that way. It's a little dot in 3D space. What this does is it says this is where we're going to be simulating our voxels. If we didn't have this, it would simulate everywhere, and you cannot simulate everywhere because that's infinite, and that's impossible to calculate. Once you get an infinite, you get infinite calculations, and therefore nothing happens. So this will be our grid that all FumeFX will work in. What you have to make sure about is make this grid big enough for all your FumeFX to work in properly. However, make it small enough that your render times are not ridiculous, or actually your simulation time. Because if it hits the edge of this box, your fire, it will square off because there's nothing left to simulate, because the box says, well, you've hit the edge. So what I'm going to do quickly is set this up to what I want for my units. So spacing is 0.75. I'll get to this later. Width is 75, length is 75, and height is 125. So that is going to be our simulation space. Now what spacing is if we go down here, we go, you see this little box right down here. This is the size of our voxel. If we decrease the size of our voxel, there will be more detail. And as you can see, my size is going up right down here as I drop this down. And if I increase the size of this, my size is going down, or my size is going down. This is because this is the size of the voxel itself. So less spacing, the smaller the voxel, therefore more voxels. Therefore, the size of the file that you're going to be exporting is going to be larger. That's what that is. And there will be more voxels per what's it called, per, how should I say, per simulation per square. As you can see, my spacing is 0.75, so every 0.75 of a generic unit, there will be a voxel. And my width is 75, therefore there will be 100 voxels across the width, and 100 voxels across the length, and then 167 up. So that is going to be, and if you just times those all together, that's how many voxels you will have to simulate them. For simulation, just for like trial and everything, before you get your actual simulation, 100 by 100 by 167 is usually pretty good. Some people say keep it square with a 75, 75, 75, or 100, 100, 100. Just keep it square. But I always find that smoke ride, you want a tendril of smoke. You don't want like a big, I'm doing something with my hands, but you can't see it. You don't want a big ball of smoke. You want a tendril. Even with like explosions, even when it explodes upwards and it has the mushroom cloud, it still tendrils up. It's always taller than it is wide, unless you got to like sequence of explosions crosswise, which is different. But yeah, so now what we're going to do is open up our FumeFX UI. So you click on your FumeFX, you click this, and this pops up. This is your FumeFX UI. Now if you click away, that disappears because it's a floating window. If you click back on it, it pops up. If you want to pin it to work on it, just pin it up here. Go pin dialog, and that should pin it. Don't know why I didn't. Well, that's just silly. Should pin the dialog up. No, it's not being nice to me. But yeah, it should pin it up and you should be fine. I like having it float like this, so I can either work on it or not work on it. It's just like another modifier to window to me. Anyways, so let's first put a scene, an object in the scene so we can emit smoke from. So what we're going to do is if we go under Create Helpers, under FumeFX, there you'll see these. There will be a simple source, an object source, particle source, gravity vector, FumeFX source, and void source. Simple source is just a source that emits. That's all it is. It's a square, a circle, or a box. Sphere, cylinder, or box. Square, circle. Sphere, cylinder, box. I have to remember this is 3D. And you can either do it inside the volume, you can do it inside the shell, like the outside shell of it, or you can do the entire solid piece of it and have that explode up as fire. Particle source, you use a particle system to make it fire. I like using this, but for ours, we're just going to use a basic object source. So we're going to click and drag that out in there. Icon size and placement doesn't really matter, just make as long as you can see it. It's like most helpers. Well, not help. Yeah, most forces actually, not helpers. Helpers matter where they place, but forces don't. But you can see we have no object to bind it to, so let's make an object. Go under FumeFX, under standard primitives, and under, what are we going for? Actually, I'm going for extend primitives. Chamfer cylinder, because I kind of want like a torch effect. And I find this gives the best. So, drag out your chamfer cylinder, set the radius to 8, the height to, I had these set up, so height to 35, and fillet to 8. And give it 3 fillet segments. So it doesn't look horrible. Here, if we turn on the wireframe. Why is my view disabled there? Turn my view back on. If you hit the D key, it disables the view. Just a little tidbit of information. Okay, so that is that one. And this is what our object source is going to be. So to make sure that our object source is emitting, you just go pick object from your FFX object source 01, FumeFX FFX, and there it is. So if we go into here and press play simulation, so start default simulation, and open preview window, you can see absolutely nothing is happening. Absolutely nothing. But not to worry, this is what I wanted to happen. So let's go into here and start looking at this. So as our spacing, width, length, height, we've already looked over that. Sensitivity is how sensitive each voxel is. 0.1, 12.1 is usually good enough. If you drop it down, you'll get better. If you drop it up, you get worse render. You'll get worse simulations. Right here is the amount of space it will take up on your computer. So for a simulation, it'll take 72 megabytes just to simulate out all this thing, because each frame will put a, here I'm going to go into my C drive, and this is just the default place where it puts it, just straight in your C drive. And you can see there are each scene, or each frame exports something. These are small at 1 kilobyte because I exported nothing, because that's what I output it to. So there's my output path. That's the default one. Always change my default output path, especially for me because I have a solid state drive and I cannot use up all that. And of course it's going to tell me I can't delete it because I am using 3ds Max, so I'm not going to delete it. So what we're going to do is, next down here is the output. So this is the start of your simulation, not the start of your playback, this is the start of your simulation. And usually you don't, unless you want like to start the explosion at the beginning, you don't start at 0 yet. I want fire, so I want it to already look like it's been burning for a while. So I give 3 seconds to start it up, it's fire, and then I'll get 3 seconds of ending frame. This viewport update is how much it updates your viewport, like how many frames it'll update your viewport. So just the higher the number, if I put it up at a higher number, so this every second it would update your viewport. If you have a slower computer or a lower graphics card, I just use the default of 10 because my graphics card's fine. Exporting channels, this is what it exports. So right now I'm exporting fuel and smoke into my output path. You can export your temperature, velocity, or extra detail if you want to. We don't need to for this. And as it says right here, these ones are needed for rendering. So you have to export the fuel and the smoke. Because, I'll go into that later though. But because I'm going to be using the fuel and smoke because it's all I need. So now we'll just set our output path. I'm going to go into my documents, my 3ds, FumeFX, and tutorial. I have a lot of FumeFX tutorials in here. Sorry about that, my microphone's caught tutorial. And I always make a new folder called output for our FumeFX output because this puts out every file. Your file name, you don't really have to change, but if you are going to change it, make sure this underscore is here. This is because if we go back into our FumeFX, it has a frame count, 000000001, and you cannot break that frame count. You need that 0 to 100 or 0 to how many frames you use to make sure that it will render properly, to make sure that it will simulate properly so that it can pull it in each frame. If you break the link, it won't be able to play back properly and it will all kind of screw up. So, as I said, if you're going to rename this, which I rarely do, just leave that right there, that little underscore there. So I'm going to save it under my path as I have right here, save. And playback is how long it plays back for in your preview window. Usually playback range 0 to 100. Usually you don't need to have your start playback because that's just starting it up to make sure that it works properly. So your simulation, when it starts playing back, it's proper. Out of range types, this is, if we go back under here actually, this allows you, out of range types allows you to easily repeat a simulation over and over again. Out of range types can easily be determined here. Actually I don't want that to, I want this. I'm just going to show you an out of range type. So I'm going to turn on auto key. I'm going to go to frame 15 and export it up like this. As you can see, the curve just goes up like this. What I want though is the curve to loop. And I can never remember how to do this properly. But what you can do is under options, curves. I know it's in here somewhere. I use it a lot. Out of range types right here. You get these loops. So you can either constant, so it can either be, so this is what happens outside the animation. So right now it's at constant. It's 0, and it goes up, and it's still constant at the end. You can cycle it, which will make sure that it'll go up, and then it'll drop back, and you do this thing over and over again. Press OK, you can see how it cycles around, and this is also easy to see in the viewport. You can just go up, 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 up. This is out of range types. This is very important for knowing FumeFX because you can easily repeat something over and over again if you just give it a proper out of range type. If we go back to there again, and go loop or relative repeat. Relative repeat's kind of cool because it'll just keep getting bigger and just repeats relative to its last. So those are out of range types. I'm going to delete that because that's just for demonstration purposes. Click back on here. It'll give you, see, start frame. Before the start, do you want it at the start frame? Do you want it to cycle before the start frame? Or do you want ping pong, which is almost like, in this one, it is like the cycle. So it goes up and then ping pongs back and forth, so it loops it. And after end, you can do that as well. Right now, no start and end frames, that's good enough. You don't really need anything more than that. Alright, select cache. Default is the best. Wavelet is for using this WTP, this wavelet turbulence, and post is for post-production. And we don't have a 3ds Max script if we want to, but you can load one right in here to make it proper. Alright, so let's go into our simulation panel. This is going to be long. Actually, let's go into our object source panel. So, as you saw, it wasn't, last time we checked, it wasn't rendering anything. So, because we didn't have an object selected to tell this this FumeFX box that we want this one object, because you can have multiple FumeFX boxes with multiple objects in it for multiple explosions or fires. So we pick our object, and we pick make sure we pick our FumeFX object, not the object that we're using for the source. And now as we render it again, so press play and then press open preview window, you can see our fire is working. There is fire. It is horrible. It is ugly. It looks like poop, but it is fire. And we will change around this. I do like how they make the smoke proper, but like it just, oh man. It's so much better than like particles or anything. But as you can see, our blue box right here is telling us how much room our animation is taking, or our fire is taking up inside our white box, or inside our yellow box, which is our boundaries for our FumeFX grid. That is really nice. Actually, I always like their smoke, but I hate their fire. Anyway, so as you can see, it's just rendering out slowly. We're not even at frame 100 yet, so I'm just going to stop that. Actually, there's different stops. Stops it after the next frame, and cancels it on that frame right away. So if you want to have that frame that you're running right then, you hit stop to let it simulate the last frame. If you want to cancel it right away, you cancel everything. So let's go into our simulation now, because this is how we're going to make our fire look. Under simulation, this is the base solver, the only solver that we can use right now. I guess they're going to add more sometime. But this tells us how it's going to calculate the smoke. It's going to solve the smoke and the fire. Quality of 5 and 200. This is the quality of our smoke. This is the iteration, so how many times it goes over every simulation step, which is 1. How many times it iterates over the frame to simulate out properly. CFL condition, I have no idea what that is. I'm so new to this. Advocation, just use the default setting for advocations. You can use the fields and vectors, or the fields, but really, this is just for the more simulation stuff for it. I honestly don't perfectly know what it is. You can use cubic advocation, I'm assuming. Time scale is, if you have a higher time scale, it'll be 1.5 seconds in the simulation counts as actually, or 1.5 frames in the simulation counts as 1 frame in animation. So it'll look slower when you render it out. If you have a lower time scale, it'll look faster, because you're saying every 0.5 frames is actually 1 frame. So you're decreasing the time scale. 1 is good enough. Some people advise using the time scale to animate explosions, like to speed it up and slow it down. It's like when it goes up higher, you slow down the explosion. I find it looks kind of cheesy. I don't find it works properly. You can use better with the gravity vorticities and the buoyancies. You can slow down the buoyancy, you can slow down the ignition rate, you can slow down all those things instead of just using the time scale. But that's just me. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is I'm going to pull up my that's my one that I'm working off of, and I'm going to start looking at these things. Alright, so let's go under our system. So our flame right now, as we have it playing, doesn't really rise fast. Oh yeah, because we have our playback. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to put a range from 0 to 100, because I want to be able to see it all the time, since our playback's from 100 to 100. And as you see, our feels kind of exploding out. It's not really rising. It's just kind of poof. It doesn't really look proper. So that is because our gravity is high. So we're going to stop this. So what gravity does, if we're going back in our simulation, this is the gravity. 1 is basic world gravity. I put it down to 1/3 so it rises faster. Because it's a bigger object, it will rise slower unless I drop it down. Vorticity is the amount of, well, almost noise, almost like turbulence, almost, it's the tendrils of the flames. So you can see it's pretty tight right here. There's only like one little tendril. If we bump up our vorticity, it will have more noise, more chaos, I guess. Might be a good word to put it. More chaos, and it'll make it look more tendril. So we're going to play that out again so you can see the difference. And as you can see, the fire is rising slower, 1. And there's tendrils coming out here and here. And, well, now there's a lot more smoke because the smoke doesn't buoyancy, but there will be tendrils up there better. So close that out. That's because there's smoke. Actually, what I'm going to do right now is turn off our smoke, because we just want to get our fire proper right now. And the fire is under fuel. So we'll worry about that later, though. We're still worrying about this. Our velocity dampening is, after how many frames does it slow down the velocity? So if you want it to be like, go out to about 25 feet or something, then you want it to slow down, you would use velocity damping. So would like speed fast and just start slowing down. Our fire will die off way quicker than it'll ever slow down because it's like a torch, so we won't use velocity dampening. X turbulence, Y turbulence, Z turbulence is the turbulence of our smoke. So I'm going to unlock this so I can do these all separately. Just click that to unlock it. X turbulence 0.25, Y turbulence 0.25, and Z turbulence 0.5. This will give it more of a tendril at the top, and it'll give it kind of a noise in the round of it. So this is just noise for the flame. If we press play and we show that up, you can see there's a bit of noise in here. You can see there's noise coming around there, around there, but the noise kind of looks weird. And that's because we haven't had our turbulence noise set to the proper details. Because this is a small scale and a small object, we're going to drop our scale down to 3. Our detail of our noise is going to be up to 5. This gives us better noise, and this recalculates the noise every 10 frames. That's what it does. So every 10 frames, recalculate the noise and then do something different with it. As you can see, it's kind of just, there's noise here, tendrils are going up there, and everything like that. However, the fuel is kind of just staying in this one area. I want it to rise. So let's go to our next thing. Cancel this out. And let's go under our fuel. Fuel is what starts the ignition. It starts the fire. It works just like a basic gasoline fire. There's fuel, there's an igniter. And it has to reach a certain temperature before it ignites. So if we go under Object Source tab, we can see our fuel temperature and smoke rate down here. And this says how much amount of fuel it is, the temperature it will take, the temperature of the flame itself. So the higher temperature, the whiter the flame. I'm going to pop this up to 400 just because it's baseless units, but it works. And I hate baseless units. I really like having something to work off of, but it's the way they built it. As well, you can see the turbulence in here, that we have the turbulence set up for our fire in here. You can make it more turbulent, but I just use a noise setting in the simulation. And this is the amount of smoke. Default 2 is usually pretty good for just basic flames. Let's go back to simulation. And now let's start playing around with the fuel settings. So as you saw, it was just kind of sitting there. So what we want to do is our buoyancy. We want to increase our buoyancy. The reason we want to do this is, think of it like water. This is how everyone has explained it to me in everything I've watched about it. Think of it like water. Buoyancy will push it up. The higher the buoyancy, the more floaty it is, I guess would be the right word, and the higher it will rise. The ignition at 100 just says how it ignites and when it ignites. That's usually pretty good. Burn rate of 30. I usually drop that down. This says how fast the fuel will burn. I don't want it to burn too fast because it's a lot of guessing and checking in the end, but these are settings I felt work well with this size. Burn rate, just how fast it burns. Pretty self-explanatory. Variation is how fast it burns and the variation on that. Because this is a torch, it's not going to always be perfect, so burn rate variation of 1. Heat production shows how much, like as you can tell, how much temperature is created from that fire. If you have like multiple sources and when it takes a certain temperature to ignite a source, you would have to use your heat production, make sure there's enough heat to ignite that source, and then it would work. I usually pop it at 15 because it gives more of a white flame for me, and it works pretty well. And expansion, I drop that down to 0.5 because I just want it kind of tendril up. I don't want to expand outwards. It's not an explosion, it's a tendril flame off of the torch. So let's press play on this and let's see how our fire's coming along. So this kind of rises up. And now you can see the fire rising a bit more. You can see tendrils coming out there, everything like that. Alrighty. So that is going to be kind of the start of our torch. Now let's stop this. And as you see, this is why you need that 100 frames at the beginning, because as you can see, it didn't really start with this tendriling until now, but now it's finally started that up. And you can see it's hitting the edge of the simulation box, but that's because of our smoke, not because of our fire. What you can do if you want to see that, press stop, and you turn on fire and fuel, and then you can actually see our fire and our fuel expanding upwards. So I'm going to turn these off. Actually, I'm going to keep fire on. That shows us our voxel pixels. That is we are using for our fire. So next thing I'm going to do is excuse me, is turn on fire creates smoke. This is, well, quite self-explanatory. The fire will create smoke at this density. Now let's go down to our smoke panel. And we want our smoke buoyancy to rise. We don't want just to float there with your negative. So as the same fuel buoyancy, it'll rise up. Smoke buoyancy on 1 makes it rise a bit slow. Dissipation min density is, this is how dense the smoke has to be before it dissipates into nothing. Dissipation strength is how fast the smoke will dissipate. So I usually put this up at 7 or 8. I want to just, it's not a long smoky, it's just a fire that has a bit of smoke coming off of it. And diffusion is how diffused that smoke is. Quite self-explanatory again. How much of a diffuse look it has. So if you think of osmosis, throw it through, it diffuses it out, something like that. Man, I can't believe I used chemistry for this. Temperature, as I said before, is how hot the flame is. So I want the temperature to rise with the flame, because you can see our object is based inside here, and I want that temperature to rise with it. So it keeps the flames white hot throughout the whole thing. Our min temperature is 0.1. That's how much it'll take before our temperature dissipates. It has to be down to 0.1 before it actually ignores it and dissipates it off. Dissipation at 3 and 0, usually pretty good for just base units. So now let's simulate the smoke and press play and see how it looks. And it's going to take a while. 127 as you can see my fire updating in the viewport, and then it does it every 10 frames. So frame 20 will update again. There it goes, updated. And as you can see, it's tendriling up, and there's smoke on the edges. The color's not proper yet, but that we can work on very easily. If you want more tendril smoke, you would just up the fuel buoyancy, yeah. Up the fuel buoyancy. I had a Facebook message. And as you can see, our tendrils of smoke is actually looking really nice, because what's happening is the temperature is rising up with the fire, therefore igniting the fire up at the top, if that makes any sense. So we'll stop that, and it didn't like that. And we'll play through this again, and we'll watch our simulation. So you just kind of see our smoke rising like that. Pause. Alright. Save that off. Actually, I should save this. Under FumeFX. I've had problems with this breaking on me. Man, I've done a lot of FumeFX stuff in the past few weeks. And this is tutorial. There. Now, next what we're going to do is set the colors of this. I'm going to skip over the wavelet turbulence because we did not use it and I don't know well enough to teach it. I'm sorry about that, but I'll learn it later. Rendering, we're going to go into our rendering tab. And step size is the amount of size, the percentage of the, percentage of the fire it'll step through before it says this is one step. 50% default is good. Jittering is the amount of jitter in the fire. You up that, it'll go kind of crazier. You down that, it'll be less. Material ID is the ID of the material you use, but we're just going to use the fire and smoke materials down here. Container edges, you can have a fall off in the container edges to make it look more smooth, so you don't just hit it and there's nothing. You can make it spherical, you can make it box, but we don't need to worry about that because we don't hit the edges of this. So if we had like a big box of fire and we're just like, okay, we can't make this any bigger, we need to fade it out somehow, well, you just use the fall off like that. This softens edges near the object, so right here would soften the edges near the object, so it would be less intensive. Volume shader, just use a standard one. You can put some of your channel data from either modifiers or scripts, but use a standard shader and separate the alpha away from it. So then you can have the lighting information and you can have the color information. Alpha is either white or black. It's either there or it's not there. That's what alpha is. Now, this screws me up way more than I would ever want to say anything. Right here on the fire color, it brings up this single keyless color mode. If you right click it, there's a key mode, and now it brings up a gradient mode. It's really annoying sometimes, but that's what you should do. So you can switch between keyless and keyed. You can load in a fire thing. I think I have a fire one in here. Fire AGT, yeah. I have a fire gradient that I like using. You can load one of those in, or you can just go to keyless mode and just have like a standard one color. So actually let's have a gradient. I'm going to go to my key mode, which allows me to have a gradient. And at this side, we want just an orange, and I'm going to go through this. So just 11 hue, 255 saturation value. At position 13, as you can see right up here, key number 1. I'm going to double click on this to bring it up. We have a red 255, green 176, blue 58, our HSV 25, 197, 255. This, I find, this is the inside of the flame to the outside of the flame. And also what I'm going to do is you can update this color inside this rendering engine while it's still up there. As you can see, I'll just change this around so you can see that you can update it while it's in there. Right, you can see that updating. And also, I'm going to undo that, cancel. This is the outside of flame to the inside of flame. I don't know why it does it that way, but this is the way it is. And so you can put a blue tinge on it. I'm going to cancel that out too. I really want a blue tinge on the inside of flame, but I can't figure out where. There he goes. Yeah, see, and you can see that blue tinge on the inside right now. Okay, and if we zoom in on this more, actually I'm going to turn off the fire. You can see that blue tinge right where the inside of flame is. And it goes, blue is hotter, and then it goes to a darker orange. So that'll be our third key at position 70. It'll be a standard blue, 0, 13, 139, just kind of a deep dark blue. You can darken it up a bit, you can lighten it up a bit, make it almost white blue. But I think what I'm going to do is cancel that out and make this almost a white color. And press OK. You can't really tell the difference because that's inside, probably inside the volume of it. So I'm just going to turn it back to a darker black, around 18, and just set it at a dark value of 18. That's the inside of it. And yeah, that'll be for our fire. Now, next thing is our color density. This I usually drop down a bit so it's less opaque. You can drop down to 0, you can't see it, to anywhere, just huge white flame. But I usually use 0.4, 0.5. Gives us kind of a nice look through, but nothing too big. Our opacity I keep at 1, and you can also go under your AFC modifier. This is just a opacity modifier. And you can see how it becomes less opaque, more opaque, etc., just by playing around with these. And you can set your own gradient of where you want your opacity to be. So at section 0, which is the outside, it is 0% opaque. Near the inside, right here, it is, it always works from the outside of the flame to the inside of the flame. You have to remember that. It's 100% at around 99% at around the 8% in. And then it slowly starts to get less opaque or more opaque, or yeah, less opaque as it comes to the middle. And then in the really middle, it just zeroes off to nothing. You can bring that up and you can see it's really opaque down the middle, or it's not opaque at all. That is just playing around. For the torch effect, this works fine. You can also just drop down the opacity itself, so you have no frame, and you can animate this to make it look like it's kind of igniting, but I wouldn't do it that way. I really wouldn't. The alpha channel, this is it white, black, etc. And then this is the global illumination modifier for using mental array. I've had problems with mental array with this and the unit setup and everything like that. It's kind of annoying. The smoke color wasn't working. You'd have to animate smoke. However, we will go over that, how to use this with mental array, because I've not seen anyone ever tell you how to use it with mental array. All right. So next thing is the smoke, and smoke is not white. I don't know why the smoke color is default white here, and I don't know why it's a gradient. So we'll right click on that, go to keyless smoke, and click on that and just darken up the smoke. And there you see it's just darker now, it's better. What you can also do is change the color to an orange. Throw it to about, actually I can't find an orange, something like that. And there we go. Lighten it up and darken it down a bit. This will make it look like it's more, the lighting from the smoke is lighting it up. However, we're going to use a light for that. If I was using mental array, I wouldn't use light for that. I would use the actual smoke color, and I would animate that because it's not being. And we don't have any fuel, but you can animate your fuel in there. Let's see if I turn off my fire. Let's see if we can actually see the fuel. No, because we don't even have the fuel simulating out, so no use to do anything for it. Right under here, this is the opacity of smoke. I'm going to check this. I usually drop this down because, I mean, smoke is not opaque. It just isn't. And again, you see the AGT, or the AFC. AGT is a gradient. You see the AFC for the gradient, for the opacity, and it's opaque throughout the whole thing. You can, as a remember, it works from the outside to the inside. You can drop it down. Or does smoke work from the inside to the outside? I don't even know anymore. It's all weird. But yeah, that's for just setting your opacity to smoke over a gradient. Your visual fall off is just how much, as you can see, it falls off into the smoke, into the tendril of flame a bit more. And your shadow fall off is when you turn on your lights, how much of a shadow it gives. And we also want to cast and receive shadows. And this only works, and again, a GI multiplier for the global illumination for mental ray. I don't find FumeFX supports mental ray very well, except for these two global illumination channels. Alright, so that's rendering. Now we have illumination. You can see there's nothing in here. But our fire over smoke is working kind of nice. And you can just see our smoke kind of rising up and dissipating out. So, we don't have any lights though, so we can't really do anything yet. So what we're going to do, I'm going to drop a light in here. Just go under standard Omni light. I'm going to show you how you do mental ray lights. Actually, what I'm going to do is delete this and save this. Save copy as. And this is tutorial mental ray. So this will give me a place to start out again before showing you how the difference between using mental ray and non-mental ray lighting. Alright, so we're going to use, I don't want F10. I want my light. Put an Omni light in there. Pull it up here and set it to be just above it. This is going to be like the color of the flame that's giving off. Because if we render this, after it's been simulated a bit, you can see that the flame doesn't give off any color. Even if we put a plane around the edge of it, just kind of simulate it out. Because there's no lights in here, it doesn't give off color. This we're going to hide too. This capsule we don't need anymore. Just hide the selection, and therefore you can just see the flame of it. You'd put your own capsule in there with like a color, with like a torch material in it, because torches are usually conicular. I don't know what capsular, I guess would be the word. But as you can see, there's really no smoke that's animated out, and there's really nothing you can see. So what we're going to do is quickly throw in this light to help out with the smoke. And I'm just going to bring that back so I can put a place in there. And what I'm going to do is just turn on shadows. This is important. Ray trace shadows. Turn on your, and it's going to be the color of the fire, so it's going to be like an orangey color. Something like that. Highly saturated orange color. And turn on your decay. This makes sure, because if we don't have our decay on, you can see it will just light up everything, and that's not how fire works. It decays out. Light decays out. And turn on your fire and near attention, I don't know how to call it properly. But you can see our smoke still has nothing. There's no smoke. Our smoke's not being illuminated at all. So we'll leave that out. And that's not good. So what I need to do is I'm going to drop down my fire attention. Attenuation. This is just how far the light will go out to. So if I put that plane back in there, I deleted it. If I put that plane back in there, it's pretty simple lighting stuff. Go into my shadow parameters, and what you need to do for shadow parameters is make sure atmosphere shadows is on. This will allow the smoke to be illuminated. Still isn't. Why is that not happening? Because we need to tell this to communicate with that light. So under our illumination tab, we pick our light, and we pick this light. And therefore, that should, as you can see, the smoke now has a color to it. We'll close that off. But it doesn't really look good, and that's because multiple scattering is not on. What multiple scattering does is it finds the points of the fire, finds the points of the lights hitting it, and it scatters it like a fire would. So usually for multiple scattering, I just use default values, 5, 1, 1 thing. You can use different values. This makes it stronger smoke values. So here, if we turn that on, as you can see, the fire smokes much better now. If we up our fire to about, like, say 2, should give us a different effect. render it out again. And actually I'm going to do an area render so we can see the difference between higher multiple scattering and low multiple scattering. So I'm just going to do half with it and half without it. So if we turn on multiple scattering and re-render this region, you can see it doesn't really look as good. You can see this smoke is much better on this side. Turn it on, drop it down to 1. You can see the fire, it's not as bright. If I drag that away, it's not as bright. I'm going to drop that back. You can put the smoke strength up, say about 15. This is going to be ridiculous. Render it out. And smoke is stronger than on that side. As you can see, it's more. There's more smoke opacity. So usually I put the smoke around 8, 7, somewhere around there. Some ridiculously high because I can. And it's just for a torch light, so it has a bit more stronger smoke. Actually, that's a bit too much too. And a big change in this will change it a lot. So this gives it a stronger fire, as you can see, and less strong smoke. So I'm just going to drop this back to 1. Fall off is how fast the light will fall off from it. So if you pop it up, there would be less lighting. I think it'll fall off quicker, as you can see. If you put it up down lower, it'll fall off slower. As you can see, there's more smoke there now. Standard of 5 is usually pretty good. Now, that is for that. Illumination map, usually pretty good, just right there. It exports a map that illuminates it, so it knows what values to use with when you simulate it out, or when you render it out. All right, so that's that one. And now, that is basically what our fire will look like with scanline rendering. What I'm going to do now is up the spacing. So when you're going to do a final render for it, usually I like being around 200 for my minimum size. So I want at least 200 width. So that's usually pretty good. 375, that'll give me 200. And yeah, I'm going to simulate this out. It'll take a while. I'm going to pause the video while I simulate it. And I'm going to be back really soon with how to use it, how to look when it renders. Alright, so now I'm back, and as you can see, we have our fire animated out. You can see the smoke going up. If we, here we're going to have to zoom this out. But you can see the smoke does not dissipate until it hits the top, which is really, shouldn't be happening like that. So, let's see our problem. And actually if we render it, we might even have the same problem. And as you can see, it's calculating maps for the smoke. This is just because of multiple scattering. And it doesn't affect it because you can't see the top of it. So, if we go view, zoom out a bit, to make sure, this is just making sure that you don't see the edge of the smoke hit the box. This is just, I guess, a very smoky torch. Don't know why. Oh, maybe. Yeah, there it was. When you hit region, difference between region and view, yeah, you can't see the top, but you just see the smoke up here. When you hit the difference between region and view, you have to hit this render button instead of just hitting F9 again. Alrighty, so that is the smoke of it. That's rendered out. Just really, this is scanlines, so this is just basics. Just set up your output size and stuff and render that out. Now I'm going to do a quick little thing of doing it over on the mental ray rendering. So let's go back to here. Tutorial mental. Yeah, that's not wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go back to F10. I'm going to see, actually I'm going to open up this and see how it is working again. See where we left this off. Let's see my frames here. Frame missing. Oh, this is not going to be good. This is putting it to the same output channels. Yeah, I'm going to have to change my output channel here. Yeah, it's all, see, there's all different looks at it. And that's not good best. That's an ugly looking thing. Alright, so I'm going to do tutorial. And where are we at? Tutorial folder. Because we should be able to use the same same effects, but the same things, but yeah. This is FumeFX. Now first I'm going to go look at my other tutorial, make sure I didn't lose all the frames. I might have them. And if so, I'll just re-render them. No, cancel. Yeah. Well, I didn't lose my frames from 100 to... Oh no, I did. Yeah. I'll need to re-simulate those frames. That's easy enough to do. Alright, so we'll just save that off. And, as we saw from what I was rendering out here, this is just before the lights. So, what we're going to have to do is throw in a lighting system. So I want a daylight system. Yes, to the creating daylight systems. And as you see, it looks different than the regular one. This is because we don't have mental ray turned on. So under render setup, assign renderer, turn it to the mental ray renderer. Close that down. And under here, go MR Sun and MR Sky. Yes, change that to that. But as you see, if we go over to here, actually first let's simulate our other stuff. This isn't going to be the one I'm worrying about too much, like as in the way of quality and everything. This is just to show you how to render it with mental ray. So let's keep going back to here. Wait for this for a bit. That shouldn't take too long. We only need a few frames. I just want some smoke here. I'll pause it and be right. Alright, so the simulation has finished, and let's just scrub through this. There's a regular simulation, smoke coming up from it. Now, if we render this out, you'll just notice the fire is kind of black and dark and ugly. So, what you have to worry about is, I'll hide that out so we can play around with this. It's just wrong. It looks wrong. So what we have to worry about first is our smoke color. That's not right. And our fire color. So what I'm going to do is create a plane down here just so we can have a, make it so that it illuminates something. Okay, that's that. Put a gray material on this. Just a quick gray material. Drop that on there. And make it nighttime so it's easier to tell. So under setup, just turn this to before in the morning. There you go. You can see it's doing nothing, it's way too dark. So our first problem is if we go under 8 to bring up our effects, and it starts using the logarithmic exposure control, which won't really work. Because since we're using mental ray light, we want MR photographic exposure control. And under a physical scale, we want this unitless because because FumeFX was not built at the same time this unit scale was working, all this physical lighting was perfect. So you're going to have to set it to unitless, and the physical scale about 75,000. This is usually about the same, so there you can see the fire is actually there. Now, if you zoom out a bit, you can't see the smoke, but that's something we have to fix up very easily. So what we're going to do is under our FumeFX, first what we're going to do is under modifier. We touched on this before, but the file and gather multiplier. This has to be bumped up. This multiplies how much light is giving off by this number. You can do this for the flames too, and we won't receive shadow. We won't cast shadows. We'll receive shadows. So then you'll be able to see this light is now giving off light, as you can see right here. Don't know why it's obscuring it like that. It might be because of the, that's just because of the capsule and everything. But you can see it's giving off light. It's not the best right now because of the finely gather precision and the finely gather multipliers. However, it is giving off light. You can see it right here, here, here. To make it better, you would probably have to use your own Omni light to throw it in there as well, but it doesn't always work that way. As well, you're going to have to bump up your opacity and your color. So I usually find like, that's a bit too much. As you see, it lights it up now. Maybe, 0.5, 0.5. There we go. Yeah. It's much bigger now, but that's because I'm zoomed in. And you can see the flames. That's how you would do it with an MR photographic, but I haven't worked around enough with it, so I like using Scanline anyways. You can still use a mental ray rendering system, you just can't use that daylight system. What you could also probably do is exclude this from being lit by this light. So let's do that. And let's actually, that'll have to go into a different tutorial now. But that was what you'll have to do for that one. So yeah, if we go, we can also turn this into more of a daytime lighting. So let's go under our setup. Bring it up to about like 8 in the morning. And you can see there's a smoke in it, and there's the fire. The shadows are a bit weird still because of our photographic exposure control. But you can still see that the fire looks alright with the smoke. If we go back to our regular tutorial, save this one. You can still use a mental ray rendering, it just won't have the same color effects. And yes, I know I have to resimulate that out. I don't know to what frame, but I have to resimulate it out. And there it is. It looks much better with this one, surprisingly. So I'm going to go set up my rendering. Do assign renderer. Go to mental ray. Excuse me. And HGTV. I like using this one. And there we are. Rendered out. You'll see it do all its multiple scattering things. Oh yeah, it's computing, find, and gather points. This is doing what it does with that multiple scattering when it brings up your FumeFX stuff and says calculating light, calculating light, calculating light. It does take much longer to do it in mental ray because of the computing, find, and gather points. So sometimes the good enough is just scanline. Okay, so here I'm going to actually just go back to that. I have to wait for this to end out. That's something you don't want to do, is to have this really long time for this to end out. Alright, so that has gone away. And just for time's sakes, we'll drop this back to default scanline render, not the IRA render. I do not like that. And you can see it creating our illumination maps, 4 passes, go to multiple scattering, and rendering it out. And there we go. So we have kind of a fire effect, like a torch. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it, hope you learned something, and I kind of want to be back with more of these FumeFX tutorials. I have like one with a smoke trail and explosion sequence. As well, I will be updating you on that contemporary apartment I am creating. I'll more do, because you don't want to see me do everything for like an hour and then have nothing done. So I'm going to do the stuff, go over it, and show you how I did it. So yeah, I'll be doing on that one too. So hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.